Republican and Democratic Caucus, the Winnebago County Board. It's Monday, February 22nd, 5:30 p.m. I'll call the roll, and if I miss anyone, please speak up. Kevin McCarthy.
Present.
Paul Arena, Bert Girl, Joe Hoffman, Gene
Present.
Crosby, Dave Kelly, Keith
Here.
McDonald, Brad Lindmark, John Butita, Tim Neighbors, Angela Fellers, Dorothy Red, Jazz Billich, Steve Schultz, Angie Girl, Jaime Salgado,
Yep.
and Jim Webster. Is anybody else present who I've missed? We have Chairman Shirelli joining us also as a guest. So we have no one from the public I see on, so there's no public comment. Looking at the agenda for Thursday's meeting, Mr. Webster has the invocation and pledge.
I do.
That's what's on the agenda.
Okay.
We're going to have a presentation from the Mental Health Board. Appointments. We've got the Zoning Board of Appeals, Tom Walsh reappointment, Tamara Verstrati. Sorry, I can't pronounce her name. And Edward Conklin, all reappointments. Anyone have any comment or questions about those appointments?
Verstrati, Tammy Verstrati.
Verstrati, thank you.
I
Mr.
do.
Burrow?
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, if there's no objection, I think that we should suspend the rules on those and get those moving. I see there's one new appointment in there. The other three for the University of Illinois, I would also urge that we suspend and pass those so they get to work those reappointments. And as far as the new appointment goes, whose district would that be in Davis there? Is that
Otter
Mr.
Creek,
Webster?
that's mine.
Webster, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
So I would leave that one up to you, Mr. Webster. But those
Yeah,
would be my suggestions.
Thank you. Just for information, Otter Creek Utility District is the utility district that services Lake Somerset. They created that for the lake themselves. No problem.
Well, my personal opinion is that I don't see anything wrong with suspending and passing reappointments. I think we shouldn't, since we've made the policy to lay these over, we should be consistent in doing a little bit of homework on, what the board is and who the appointees are. So my personal feeling would be to not suspend on the utility district board, unless it's a compelling reason to do so. But that's just my opinion of that.
Paul, this is Angela Fellers.
Go ahead, Angela.
I agree with you that on new appointments, I don't think that we should suspend the rules, but I also think that we should also not suspend the rules on appointments of board members to outside boards, just to hold ourselves to the same standards that we do to new board appointments.
Yeah,
I don't think that we should do anything special for anyone who sits on the board currently.
right. And just so everyone knows, there's no detrimental effect to delaying these reappointments. They continue to serve until they're either reappointed or somebody else replaces them.
Right. My concern is that by not suspending, or by suspending for people who are current elected officials on the board, that we're closing down a window for public comment that may be necessary. And so I don't want to expedite anything that involves a current sitting board member.
I agree. And I suppose if opposition came up on any of the others, I would also think we shouldn't suspend, but I don't expect that to happen. So is there any additional comment on the appointments? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on. Standing committees, finance, Mr. Salgado.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's a couple items that we have. There's two budget amendments relating to the, I want to say the courts with Mr. Tom Jakeaway. These are in regards to the COVID. They got some grants. It's margin neutral essentially. So there is no impact to the budget, but it is something that was not part of their budget. So they have to go through as a budget amendment. I think one is like in the ballpark of 30,000. The other one is significantly higher on the hundreds, 150 or higher than that. But it, like I said, it's margin neutral. It is a grant that they got from the state. So something with COVID and technology for the courts. So it should be a pretty straightforward. I believe they try to push one through, but then they got an additional grant. So they took it back from the previous board. And now they're combining it together. So pretty straightforward on those. There are 4 other workman's comps that were previously were addressed by our attorney. And so it's just a matter of they negotiated the terms, the dollar amounts. So there are 4 workman's comps that's going to go through. If you guys want the dollar amounts, I can certainly ramble those out, but pretty straightforward workman's comp. There's 4 of them. Like we said, we discussed those in closed session before, so it's nothing new that is surprising here. So, but that's all finance has coming up this Thursday.
Okay, is there any questions or comments on the finance agenda?
Just one.
Go ahead, Mr. Webster.
Yeah, typically we get a lot of these claims from River Bluff, the sheriff's department, or so are these following suit with that or what?
I believe some of them are from the sheriff's department, the jail, and I don't know about the other 2. Let me look real quick. I can.
May I answer that? I have it in front of me. One is from IT and the other one is from the state's attorney's office. And 2 were from the sheriff's department.
Interesting.
From IT, I don't recall, what was the, Mr. Salgado, do you remember the details of that one? I don't remember the.
Yeah, give me 1 sec. I'll pull it up for you. Let's see here. Where is it?
The state's attorney, I remember, was a court advocate who was injured, hurrying to assist somebody during a trial when there was a belief that there was a problem.
I just have a question. Can we talk about details of workman's comp injuries in open session?
Yes. Yeah, we can,
Mr.
because these are they have been approved by the finance committee for settlement.
Okay, that was just a question about procedure, not a question of you.
Yeah, it's when it's being negotiated on the terms of the settlement that we don't want that information being out in the public. From an HR perspective, if there are any HIPAA laws, then obviously we would not be able to discuss any of that nature.
Thanks for that clarification.
Sure, no problem. So we have Ryan Beckett. I'm trying to figure out which one is the oh, here we go. Ryan Beckett is the IT person, and it's for $19,446.44. I don't know what the actual cause was in relating to what the type of the injury was, but that is the individual Ryan Beckett for $19,446.44. Hopefully, Caroline, I can reach out to her and get details. I know she gave a brief summary for each one, so I don't know for those that were in the finance committee if they recall what this was related to.
Okay. Is there any other comment or questions on finance agenda? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to zoning. Mr. Webster. You're on mute, Jim.
How's that? A little better? Okay, we got two items at our upcoming meeting this coming Wednesday. They both came out of Zoning Board of Appeals with unanimous approval. So we will follow them at our committee to see if we agree with them. By the way, now, all zoning matters are posted in a little more user-friendly manner. And you can see the way they are now. You just click on to that attachment and it opens up all of them in a kind of a pick and choose menu of what you want to see. So if you want to see what happened at the Zoning Board of Appeals, the most recent one, click onto that one. You can see the testimony that was given and taken by the Zoning Board of Appeals and the petitioners and objectors, what they had to say. Typically, ZBA did the job they normally do. They look very deeply into items. They just had those two on the agenda, and you'll see that they worked on that for a little over 2 hours before they came to their conclusion. So good job to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Webster. So is it appropriate for us to ask questions about this now prior to your committee hearing it? Because I read the file on this and there's something I'm curious about, but I can tune in on Wednesday if you'd prefer to not talk about it in caucus until your committee has addressed it. And I'm not sure what's the protocol here.
Well, I can certainly help you best as I can. I can't tell you how everybody else is going to vote.
Right. So this is my question. I was reading through there and it said, as part of one of these special use permits, the petitioner wanted to be able to serve beer at their location in addition to the wine that they were like serving as a tasting to sell wine. And it appeared that staff was saying that that makes it more like a bar and not like a winery. But then I couldn't find in there, and I did read, there was a lot of content, so I read through it as quickly as I could, but I didn't see, like, in the end, what did the staff say on, or our staff say on that providing beer at this venue? What's your take on that? Am I understanding it correctly?
Yeah, excuse me. Go back to that email you got and back to that menu, and you'll see where there's a staff statement on there. And they fully explain it on that staff statement about the reasons why they viewed it the way they did. You have to remember this is a special use permit in the agricultural district. Any other place that serves beer is not in an ag district. It's in one of our commercial districts, what have you. So the winery is approved in an ag district because of our county code. It allows wineries by way of a special use permit. There's nothing in our code that allows for beer at the winery by way of a special use permit. And so it would be opening up a new door, I guess, so to speak. There's no other wineries in the county, and certainly there's none in the area that serve beer. And so there is quite a difference there. Wineries are allowed in the ag district because you're growing and selling a product that you should be growing on the property there, whether it's grapes or berries of some sort, whatever, to make wine out of. And that's the whole point of it. So, in a nutshell.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Webster. Does anyone else have any questions for Mr. Webster about the zoning agenda?
I have a follow-up question on that. If a brewery were to grow hops, would that be in line with the same logic as a winery growing grapes?
Yeah, we could look at that as well, because if they're growing the hops, but it's not just hops that makes beer, as you know. So
Right, I was just using that as an example.
sure. So far we haven't had that. Okay, without getting real deep into things there, we had a farm recently that tried to grow hops, and I see they have abandoned their efforts. I do not know why. And I do not know if that was their intent to do that. But when you get into the brewery, as you know, we don't have any breweries out in the outlying areas, in the agricultural districts. Right now, all of our breweries lie in incorporated areas.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Webster. Is there any other comment on this? Mr. Lindmark?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I knew the special use permit was coming up. I'm not a wine drinker, but it is in my district, so I went out and visited the facilities. It's first class, very nice facility.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I need to interrupt. We're getting into new testimony on a zoning matter, and we're not allowed to do that. I'm sorry.
All right, thank you for that comment, Mr. Schultz.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Okay, I think, I'll watch the zoning committee on Wednesday to educate myself on this. And they do get laid over, so we don't have to, if there's questions, we'll have an opportunity to discuss it at a caucus. Any further discussion on the zoning?
No, I just want to add one thing to what Mr. Schultz just said for your edification. So, Mr. Lindmark, when you try to offer, when anyone tries to offer some more information, particularly something that says, I just drove past there and I didn't see a problem or whatever, you're offering testimony that is outside of the testimony, that sworn testimony that was given at the Zoning Board of Appeals. And very briefly, the Zoning Board of Appeals is a quasi-judicial body as mandated by the state of Illinois. And so if you give testimony at the Zoning Board of Appeals, it's sworn testimony, the books are closed on testimony after that. No more new testimony is accepted or taken after that. If that happens, one of two things. Either it goes back to the Zoning Board of Appeals for a whole new session, whole new testimony. They open that all back up again. We have to send it back down the pike. Number two, if a board member does that, offers testimony, then you have taken and inserted yourself into that process there, and then you yourself cannot vote on the matter. So be very cautious about entering any new testimony. I hope that helps straighten things out. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Webster. Go ahead, Mr. Lindmark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your clarification on that.
You're welcome.
And it is, Mr. Lindmark, I did the exact same thing that you did, a year or two ago when I was unfamiliar with the process. I'm still learning myself. So zoning does have its own special rules. But thank you, Mr. Schultz and Mr. Webster, for explaining it to us. Okay, we'll move on. I think when I originally did the roll call, I don't believe Mr. Booker was on, Mr. Tassoni, and perhaps I missed Mr. Billich, but those three have also joined the meeting. So economic development, Mr. Billich, do you have anything you'd like to say? I see there's no report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, we have no report. I would just say that you actually didn't miss me in the roll call, so we're all good there. And just if I can make just a quick comment in regards to like everything that was said already. Mr. Webster said it very well. One thing that he did say was obviously with the new testimony. However, obviously being that we reference each other's districts when in regards to zoning, just being on the zoning board of appeals, I remember that through the process, you can still show support for whatever's going on or being proposed for your district, but without new testimony, as Mr. Webster said. And that's all I got.
Thank you, Mr. Billich. Operations, Mr. McDonald, anything to share with us?
No, sir, no report for this week. Thank you.
Thank you. Public Works, Mr. Tassoni.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I apologize. I thought the board or the meeting was at 6, so luckily I tuned in somewhat early. We have 2 resolutions coming forward this Thursday. The first item is 21-002. It's just basically annual housekeeping. It's retirement of the bonds paid by MFT for $1,450,000. That's general annual things we do through the highway department. And the next is 21-003. It's $61,662 for engineering, preliminary engineering studies for out in the Riverside, Forest Hills, Alpine Exchange there to get some engineering work started on that. That's a budgeted item coming out of MFT funds as well.
Thank you, Mr. Tassoni. Any comment or question to Mr. Tassoni? Okay, seeing none. Moving on to Public Safety and Judiciary Committee. Mr. Gurl.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have one ordinance change for Thursday. It is in regards to animal services, the fee schedule. The fees they want to increase from $110 to $150. This would bring us more in line with other agencies that do adoptions. We would still be quite lower than other agencies, but it would bring us back in the line. It would provide some additional funding for animal services too. There's also some language change on how they proceed with certain individuals on adoptions. This language change would actually speed up their process. Instead of taking a few weeks for adoptions to get done with certain individuals, this would speed it up. So it would definitely save time and money at animal services. I plan on just reading it in to be laid over just in case there is any questions or in case any constituents of any board members feel that that's too high, then we can go back and forth. So that is all Public Safety and Judiciary has. We did have an update from the Crime Commission. If you didn't tune in, I would suggest that you go and check out that YouTube. Very informative from the Crime Commission, exactly how they were formed, what they do, and exactly their objectives on curbing recidivism, working with juveniles, working with domestic violence and other individuals, and just trying to be good stewards of our 1% tax dollars. And that is all from this committee.
Thank you, Mr. Gurl. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Gurl? Okay, seeing none. We got unfinished business. No comments on, or nothing that anyone can think of there, I assume. New business, I have an item. We all received probably notifications from our the counties, Association of Counties, and in that they made us aware that the governor's budget proposal includes a reduction in the local government distributive fund, and it would be a 10% reduction that they're proposing, and it would affect our budget by a reduction of $588,902. So the counties had sent forward, the county association had sent forward a model resolution and a model letter to the governor expressing our concern over what that would mean for us. Chairman Shirelli had shared those documents with me and just wanted us to talk about it a little bit. I feel that we should bring forward a resolution and talk about publicly what the impact of this would be. Obviously, you all know that we were deficit spending in the past, so there's no money for us to offset this loss. And I think our conversations now have to be about reduction in services. I don't think the public in general are, they're not going to start out, being open to tax increases. And obviously we have limited options on taxes to even increase to offset this. But, should this reduction in our funding go through, there's going to have to be some impact on our budget, some change in how we operate to absorb the loss. And I think by bringing forward the resolution and debating it, we can also better inform the public on what that means to the community. So I'd be interested in hearing your comments, Mr. Girl.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, sad news again from the state of Illinois. It seems every year they do this. They put an administrative fee a few years ago on our 1% public safety sales tax, which siphoned money away from us again. Just a bit of good news is that we did vote for the property tax increase last year. That gave us about $900,000. So it would offset this reduction, but it's still money that would be gone. So we would only really see a net profit around 400,000 from those increases. But who's to say that this is the last increase from the state or a unfunded mandate? So I think, Paul, Chairman, you're right on schedule there that we need to pass this resolution stating our opinion to the governor, because as a municipality, we cannot keep doing this. We just don't have any more cutting to do. Next thing, we're going to have to lay off people. So the governor and our state legislators need to know our position where we're at. So thank you for your leadership on that.
Thank you, Mr. Girl. Ms. Fellers, you have a comment?
Yes, I spoke with Executive Director McCoy today at length about some of the unfunded mandates that are coming through legislation right now from the state. And to hit us with a 1-2 punch of unfunded mandates and increased costs from legislation, and then to also cut our budgets. It's a double effect that we just can't sustain, not when there's an increased need, and certainly not when we're talking about cutting services. So I am in agreement with you that we should pass a resolution and that we should call upon the state to keep our money where it's supposed to be.
Thank you, Ms. Fellers. Mr. McCarthy.
So otherwise, with this 588,000 plus, that's going to be out of our budget. I mean, we would have to look into, as I think maybe Mr. Girl said too, about, I don't know, possible layoffs, because obviously we can't get this money from anywhere else. Is that correct?
That is correct. So we can raise our cap on the property tax levy. When we raised it last, is to generate an extra $900,000 in revenue. So that as far as I know, we have sales tax fees like are being raised now with animal services and the property tax. Those are our areas, and the cap on property taxes limits to how much we can raise. So that would be part of bringing forward a resolution, would be that conversation for the public's benefit. If this cut goes through, maybe our only option is cuts in service or an increase in the levy, which nobody wants.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
If I can follow up, please, Mr. Chairman. It's two things.
Miss Angela, if you can hold on, I have Mr. Webster next, and then we'll come back to you.
Of course.
Mr. Webster.
Yeah, thank you. If you saw the news today, the governor also signed on to that crime bill that virtually all the law enforcement entities were opposed to. In the long term, because we're talking about reductions in income and so forth, that we have costs that we won't be able to cover. This is going to fall into that category as well in one way or another. Eliminate any bonds to begin with. Turning someone loose again and again without a bond, that puts more stress on law enforcement. We're talking about if we don't have the money, having to make budget cuts and laying people off some way or another. You're putting more strain, more stress on the law enforcement to begin with. And then if there's no bonding whatsoever, we all know that oftentimes people, they bond, but they never come back anyway. So they wind up forfeiting that bond money. And so I think it's just this whole setup here, all coming together here under this governor is just hurting us more and more all the time. It's hurting local government. Not just our county, but all the counties. And I just don't see an end to it there. So I don't know what the answer is. I really don't. We don't want to raise taxes, but on the other hand, our expenditures keep going up through the roof. So I don't know, just food for thought. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Webster. And on the topic of the crime bill, I think I had a conversation with Mr. Girl a while ago, and perhaps it's extensive, but we could, periodically have a different part of it discussed in public safety and judiciary so that we can ask questions. Like Mr. Webster brought up the bonding thing. That's a very specific part of it. And we could ask questions so we better understand it. Because I've been having people ask me questions and I don't know how to answer them because I don't know as much as I should on that subject. Ms. Fellers, go ahead. You wanted to follow up?
I did. But first, I want to offer some clarification on Mr. Webster's comments in that the policing modernization bill, which he referenced, does not eliminate bond. It eliminates cash bond, which means that people who are being released are not being just simply ticketed and released on their own recognizance. Their release is predicated upon their ability, their social capacity. They could be released, for example, to home detention or into a public service or into families. It's really no different than what it is now. It just eliminates the cash aspect of it and eliminates ability to pay as a barrier to justice. It also, cash bond has never, won't ever be, and a source of revenue. It's a deposit, not a revenue source. So I wanted to clarify those two things. But my question is the reduction in sending funds back to counties. It's my understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that they're simply saying we're going to send you back less of your own money. So if we collect $100 in property taxes, right now I'm using a made up number, they send back 80, and now they're saying that they're going to send back 85. So the amount that we tax is essentially taxed by the state, and then they send it back to us. Is that how that works?
My understanding is this is a reduction in share of income tax revenue that had, previously been given to counties. Chairman Shirelli, is that correct?
Yeah, the LGDF is a prorated share for each municipality in the state and counties for the income tax. You're correct, Chairman. And what we're asking for is not to cut 10%, but to restore back to 10% also. It was originally always 10%, which equals about $588,000 if they take that away. So every municipality in this state is going to be objecting to that. So we definitely need to be party to that as a county, and also we need to send a letter to each one of our state legislators too, because I've had conversations with them, and they're going to be our front line to make sure that they send that message to the governor also. So it's imperative that they know our feelings, the state legislators, and also the governor's office know our feelings on that. I know the city of Rockford is also fighting this. It's going to be a huge negative impact to lose that almost $600,000 in revenue that has always been there for many years. They've been cutting that several years ago, and then they restore it, they cut again, and they restore. But now they're trying to cut the full 10%. So it's going to have a huge effect on our county.
Thank you for that clarification.
Yes, thank you.
Mr. Schultz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do think it may also give us some additional leverage that we are one of the counties in the state of Illinois that is really struggling financially in the extreme. And I'm not suggesting that the virus has not affected the entire state. I know it has, but we have a deficit budget. We have a substantial deficit budget this year, and that's eating into reserves. And it seems like that, as being part of our message uniquely, might be helpful to us.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz. Mr. Hoffman.
Thank you, Chairman. This might be a dumb question, but I'm sure Angela or Steve or you can answer this. On the last election, we had a budget question and it got voted down. Does that have any effect on this?
Well, what I heard from the governor's press conference after his budget address was that the state was not going to raise, there's no raise in the income tax. And I thought he said no cuts, but this is more or less a cut to local governments who in turn would have to do a tax increase or a cut in service. So I thought it was a little, I don't know, political posturing. But yeah, ultimately the governor has stated that there's going to be an impact of the aggressive tax being rejected.
Yeah, this is a direct impact of the progressive tax being not being voted into law by voters. Without that amendment, there isn't a way for Springfield to raise or lower taxes on various incomes. So without disproportionately affecting people who are poor, they didn't have another revenue stream. And so the biggest hurt or the biggest punch of that is that all of the funds that would have come in under the new, as they were written under the new progressive tax, would have been fungible, meaning that they could have been used and dispersed immediately to municipalities for emergency relief. But it didn't pass. And so that's why we're looking at the climate that we're looking now.
Right. And, I think my perception of the progressive tax and the taxing situation for the state differs some from Ms. Fellers, but I think at this point in time, we're just dealing with the reality of the situation. The progressive tax didn't pass. Where do we go from here? The state could raise the income tax across the board, and it would affect everybody proportionate to their income. Or the state could make cuts themselves rather than making us do it. I think we're already pretty limited on our options. So it's appropriate, in my opinion, to make that point and say, you're backing us into a corner here. We don't really have options to just go through. And our debate on the resolution can help bring those points forward.
Thank you all for the making it clear. I figured that was the train headlight that I seen coming through the tunnel when we voted it down. So I guess just thanks for confirming it.
Thank you, Mr. Hoffman.
Mr.
Anyone? Yes.
Yeah, so I just not to keep going on, I think we know what our budget constraints are and everything, what we've gone through the last couple of years, even 10 years, 20 years with our budget deficits and our spending and not having a balanced budget. So I think I'm in agreement with having the county administrator and Mr. Richter, our CFO, kind of put numbers together on seeing what that projection would look like. I'm not saying something significant, but obviously Bert kind of did a quick math, 400,000, give or take, deficit spending essentially into reserves, something of that nature based on our challenges that we're currently experiencing, and just draft out a letter and hopefully that resolution. And then we can have more discussions if we want to add more language, other additional exhibits, whatever it is that we need to, and then take a vote on it that direction. So, and I would assume this would come through finance or resolution. So we can have those discussions within there. But I think everybody is well aware of our budget challenges that we experience. So any unfunded mandates, like we've explained, and certainly these things coming down the pipeline, it's not going to help our situation. We are where we're at, and we just have to move forward and make those decisions.
Thank you, Mr. Salgado. Does anyone else have any other comments on that topic or any other that you'd like to bring before the caucus? Okay, seeing none, can I have a motion to adjourn? Mr. Girl, second by Mr. Hoffman, Ms. McCarthy. All those in favor?
All
Aye.
right,
Okay.
see you guys on Thursday.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you.
Everybody have a good night.
Thanks.